Story 1. I'm a high school English teacher, and I spend a lot of my free time at our local library. During summer break, I typically check out stacks of books for both personal reading and to preview potential additions to my classroom curriculum. The librarians know me well since I've been coming here for over 10 years, and they're always helpful when I need to find specific titles or authors. Last Tuesday, I was at the checkout desk with my usual haul, about 15 books, covering everything from contemporary young adult novels to classic literature I wanted to revisit. I always make sure to return everything on time because I know how popular some of these titles can be, especially during summer when kids are trying to knock out their required reading lists. The librarian, Mrs. Peterson, was scanning my books when this woman approached the desk behind me. She had a boy with her who looked to be around 14 or 15, and she was clearly agitated about something. I was focused on organizing my books when I heard her clear her throat loudly. "Karen, excuse me, but I need to speak with someone about this situation." Mrs. Peterson finished scanning my last book and looked up pleasantly. "Mrs. Peterson, of course, how can I help you?" "Karen, this woman is checking out way too many books. My son needs some of these for his summer reading, and people like her are making it impossible for students to get what they need." I turned around, confused. "Me? I'm sorry, is there a specific book you're looking for? I'd be happy to see if I have it." "Karen, it's not about one book. It's about you taking 15 books when other people need them too." Mrs. Peterson looked diplomatically between us. "Mrs. Peterson? Ma'am, our policy allows patrons to check out up to 20 items at a time. This patron is well within the limits." "Karen, well, your policy is wrong. Students should have priority, especially for educational materials." "Me, I am actually a teacher. I use these books for my classroom and professional development." "Karen, I don't care what you claim to be. My son has been waiting weeks to get some of the books on his required reading list because people like you hoard them." The boy with her looked mortified and kept trying to pull on her arm. "Son, Mom, can we just go? I already found 2 of the books I need." "Karen, no, this is about fairness. She's hoarding knowledge and keeping it from students who actually need it for school." Other patrons in line were starting to stare. Mrs. Peterson maintained her professional composure, but I could see she was getting frustrated. "Mrs. Peterson, ma'am, all of our patrons have equal borrowing rights regardless of age or occupation. If there are specific titles your son needs, I can help him place holds or find alternative copies." "Karen, that's not good enough. You need to limit how many books people can take, especially popular ones. It's not fair that some greedy person can just take whatever they want." "Me, I always return my books on time, and I only take what I actually plan to read. If your son needs something specific, I'm genuinely happy to let him have it." "Karen, see? Even she knows it's wrong. You should make it a rule that no one can check out more than 5 books at a time." Mrs. Peterson was clearly running out of patience. "Mrs. Peterson, ma'am, our borrowing policies are set by the library board and are designed to serve all community members fairly. I cannot and will not change them based on one complaint." "Karen, then I want to speak to your manager. This is discrimination against students." "Mrs. Peterson, I am the head librarian, and since you're raising concerns about borrowing policies, let me check your account to see if there are any issues we need to address." She turned to her computer and typed for a moment. "Mrs. Peterson, what's your last name, ma'am?" Karen gave her name, still fuming about the unfairness of the system. Mrs. Peterson's expression changed as she looked at the screen. "Mrs. Peterson, ma'am, I'm showing that you currently have $87 in unpaid late fees on your account." The color drained from Karen's face. "Karen, that can't be right. I always return books on time." "Mrs. Peterson, according to our records, you have 3 books that were returned 32 days late, 2 books that were returned 45 days late, and 1 book that's currently 26 days overdue." "Karen, those dates are wrong. Your system must be broken. Mrs. Peterson turned her monitor so Karen could see the screen. Mrs. Peterson, here are the due dates and return dates for each item. The overdue book is The Great Gatsby, which was due on June 15th. Karen's son looked embarrassed. Karen, that's not the point. The late fees are excessive. Mrs. Peterson, our late fees are 50 cents per day per item, which is clearly posted throughout the library. With an outstanding balance of $87, I'm required to suspend your borrowing privileges until the fees are paid in full. Karen, you can't do that. My son needs books for school. Mrs. Peterson, your son can apply for his own library card if he doesn't have one. The suspension only applies to your account. Karen, this is ridiculous. I came here to complain about her hoarding books, and now you're punishing me. Mrs. Peterson, ma'am, I'm enforcing existing library policies. Your account shows a pattern of late returns going back several months. Karen turned back to me, somehow trying to make this my fault. Karen, this is all because of people like you taking too many books. If there were fewer books being hoarded, people wouldn't have to keep them so long. Ma'am, late fees have nothing to do with how many books other people check out. They're based on when you return your books. Mrs. Peterson, exactly. The due dates are clearly stamped in each book and printed on your receipt. Karen, well, I'm not paying $87 in ridiculous fees. I'll just use a different library. Mrs. Peterson, that's certainly your choice. However, most libraries in this area share the same system, so your account status will be the same everywhere. Karen grabbed her son's arm and stormed toward the exit. Karen, come on. We'll buy your books online instead of dealing with this corrupt system. Son, but Mom, buying all my summer reading books will cost way more than $87. Karen, that's not the point. After they left, Mrs. Peterson shook her head and sighed. Mrs. Peterson, some people think library policies don't apply to them, then get angry when there are consequences. I feel bad for her son. He seemed like he just wanted to get his reading done. Mrs. Peterson, he can come back on his own anytime. Teen cards are free and don't require parental permission. I left the library that day with my 15 books, grateful for librarians who maintain fair policies for everyone. A week later, I saw Karen's son there by himself, quietly working through his summer reading list with his own library card. Sometimes the system works exactly as it should. Story 2. My father passed away after a long battle with cancer. He was 73 and had lived a full life as a high school history teacher, devoted husband for 47 years, and father to 3 kids. The whole community loved him. Former students would stop him at the grocery store just to chat, and he volunteered at the local food bank every weekend until he got too sick. We planned a simple service at Peterson Funeral Home. Nothing fancy, just the way Dad would have wanted it. About 60 people showed up, family, longtime friends, former colleagues, and some of his students. Mom had asked me to give the main eulogy since I was the oldest, and my sister was going to read a poem Dad had written for Mom on their anniversary last year. The service was going beautifully. Pastor Williams had just finished his opening remarks, and I was walking up to the podium when the back doors of the chapel burst open. This woman in a bright red dress and matching hat came strutting in like she owned the place. Everything about her screamed attention-seeking, from her loud outfit to the way she clicked her heels on the floor. Everyone turned to look. My mother, who was sitting in the front row with my sister and brother, looked confused. I didn't recognize the woman at all, and from the murmurs behind me, neither did anyone else. The woman marched right up to the front where my mother was sitting. Karen, excuse me, you need to move. I should be sitting in the front row. My mother looked stunned. Mom, I'm sorry, do I know you? Karen, I'm Karen. I was with your husband long before you were. I deserve to sit up front. My sister immediately stood up. Sister, ma'am, this is our father's funeral. You need to go back to your seat. She literally tried to push past my 68-year-old mother to get to the front row. I stepped down from the podium. Ma'am, I need you to take a seat in the back so we can continue the service. Karen, no, I should be giving the eulogy. I knew the real him, not the fake version you all created. Pastor Williams looked uncomfortable but tried to handle the situation diplomatically. Pastor Williams, ma'am, perhaps we can discuss this after the service. Right now, the family would like to continue. Karen, the family doesn't know what they're talking about. Your father and I had a passionate affair in 1987. We were meant to be together. I felt my face burning. My parents celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary in 1987. There was no way this woman was telling the truth. Ma'am, you need to leave. Now. Karen, I'm not leaving until I get to speak. He promised me I would be the one to tell everyone about our love. She actually tried to push me away from the podium so she could get behind it. That's when Mr. Peterson, the funeral director, stepped in. Mr. Peterson, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. Karen, you can't make me leave. I have every right to be here. Mr. Peterson, this is a private service for invited guests only. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll call security. Karen, I don't need an invitation. I saw his obituary in the paper and I knew I had to come. That's when it hit me. She wasn't even invited. She just read about Dad's death in the newspaper and decided to show up. Karen, he would want me here. We were together for 3 beautiful months before his wife stole him away from me. 3 months. She was disrupting my father's funeral over a 3-month relationship from almost 40 years ago. Mr. Peterson motioned to someone in the back, and 2 men in suits started walking toward us. Mr. Peterson, ma'am, these gentlemen are going to escort you out. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Karen, this is a mistake. I should be the one eulogizing him, not these people who never understood him like I did. The security guards each took one of her arms and started walking her toward the door. She was still yelling the whole way. Karen, you're all making a huge mistake. He loved me more than any of you. I was his true love. The chapel doors closed behind her, and there was complete silence for about 10 seconds. Then Pastor Williams cleared his throat. Pastor Williams, let's take a moment to refocus on why we're here today to celebrate the life and memory of a wonderful man. I returned to the podium, but honestly, it took me a few minutes to collect my thoughts after that chaos. My mother looked mortified, and I could see several people whispering to each other. I managed to get through my eulogy, talking about what an amazing father and teacher Dad had been. My sister read Mom's poem, and several other people shared beautiful memories. The service ended up being lovely despite the interruption. After everything was over, Uncle Jim came up to me. Uncle Jim, I remember that woman. She worked at the diner your dad used to go to for lunch when he first started teaching. They dated for like 2 months before he met your mother. 2 months. She had disrupted our father's funeral over a 2-month fling from 1979, not even 1987 like she claimed. Later that week, we found out she had also tried to get into the cemetery during the burial, but the staff there had been warned and turned her away at the gate. Some people really have no shame. Story 3. Taking my 8-year-old son to the amusement park was supposed to be a fun Saturday treat. We'd been planning this trip for weeks, and he'd been especially excited about riding the Thunder Mountain coaster. I'd warned him that popular rides meant long waits, but he assured me he was ready for the patience test. We'd been standing in line for about 45 minutes, slowly making our way toward the front. My son had been incredibly well behaved, entertaining himself with a handheld game and chatting with other kids in line. We were finally third in line when I noticed a commotion behind us. A woman was ducking under the rope barriers with her son, who looked about the same age as mine. She squeezed past several families and planted herself right in front of us, acting like she'd been there all along. Excuse me, but the line starts back there. Karen, oh no, we were just up here before we went to the bathroom. We've been waiting just as long as everyone else." I looked around at the other families nearby. Nobody seemed to recognize this woman or her kid. Me? I don't think so. We've been in this spot for 20 minutes, and I would have noticed you. Karen, are you calling me a liar? Her voice was getting louder, and people were starting to turn around to see what was happening. Me, I'm just saying that you weren't in this part of the line before. My son tugged on my sleeve and whispered loudly enough for nearby people to hear. My son, Dad, they definitely weren't here. I've been counting the people in front of us this whole time. There were only 6 people, and now there are 8. The kid was right. He'd been keeping track because he was excited about being so close to the front. Karen, your brat needs to mind his own business. That's when I got angry. Calling my kid a brat for telling the truth crossed a line. Me, don't call my son names. He's absolutely right, and you know it. Karen, I don't have to listen to this from you or your lying kid. The families behind us were paying attention now. A dad from a few spots back spoke up. Dad behind us, she's definitely cutting. I saw her walk all the way up from the back. Mom behind us, same here. She just ducked under the ropes and pushed past everyone. Karen, this is ridiculous. We just went to the bathroom. My son, if you went to the bathroom, why didn't you ask someone to hold your spot like my dad told me to do if I needed to go? The kid had a point. That's exactly what I'd explained to him when we first got in line. Karen, because I don't need to explain myself to a bunch of strangers. A theme park employee working the ride entrance noticed the raised voices and walked over. Ride operator, is there a problem here? Karen immediately switched to victim mode. Karen, these people are harassing me and my son. We were just coming back from the bathroom, and they're accusing us of cutting in line. Ride operator, ma'am, were you holding a spot in line? Karen, we were right here before we left. My son, that's not true. I've been watching the whole time because my dad said we were almost at the front. They came from way back there and went under the ropes. He pointed toward the back of the line where Karen had actually come from. Ride operator, son, are you sure about that? My son, yes sir. There were 6 people in front of us, then 7 when that family with the twins joined, and now there are 9 because they pushed in front of us. The ride operator looked impressed by my son's detailed account. Dad behind us, the kid's absolutely right. We all saw her cut in line. Mom behind us, she walked past at least 20 families to get up here. Another dad, my daughter pointed it out when it happened. We were wondering if someone was going to say something. Karen, this is unbelievable. You're all ganging up on me. Ride operator, ma'am, if multiple people are saying you cut in line, I'm going to have to ask you to go to the back and wait your turn. Karen, I am not going to the back. My son has been waiting just as long as everyone else. Ride operator, actually, ma'am, based on what I'm hearing from multiple witnesses, that's not accurate. Karen, I want to speak to your manager. Ride operator, you can speak to security if you'd like, but you still need to go to the back of the line. My son, bless his heart, decided to be helpful again. My son, ma'am, it's not that bad. We waited 45 minutes, and it went by pretty fast. The line moves quicker than it looks. Karen, I don't need advice from a little brat. That did it. Several parents around us started speaking up. Various parents, don't call him a brat. He's been nothing but polite. She's the one causing problems. The ride operator held up his hand. Ride operator, ma'am, you need to calm down and move to the back of the line, or I'll have to call security. Karen, fine. But this is the worst customer service I've ever experienced. As she stomped away with her embarrassed-looking son trailing behind her, the ride operator turned to the families she'd tried to skip. Ride operator, I apologize for that disruption. Let me make it up to you folks. He pulled out a stack of Fast Pass tickets from his pocket. Ride operator, these will get you to the front of the line for 3 other rides in the park. Consider it an apology for having to deal with that situation. He handed Fast Passes to our family, and the 4 families that had been directly behind us. My son, really? We get to skip lines now. Right, operator, absolutely. And thanks for being so observant and honest about what happened. As we finally boarded the ride, I could see Karen at the very back of the line, which had grown significantly longer during her argument. Her son was pointing at the fast passes in other kids' hands and asking questions she clearly didn't want to answer. My son, Dad, why did she try to lie about being in line? Me, some people think the rules don't apply to them. Buddy, but you did the right thing by telling the truth. My son, do you think her son knows she was lying? I looked back at the end of the line, where Karen was gesticulating angrily while her kid looked around at all the families ahead of them. Me, I think he's figuring it out. The ride was fantastic, and the fast passes made the rest of our day even better. Every time we used one, my son would grin and say it was his reward for being honest. Sometimes doing the right thing really does pay off. Story 4. I've had sleep apnea for 15 years now. Without my CPAP machine, I stop breathing dozens of times each night. It's not just about being tired the next day, it's literally life-threatening. When I was first diagnosed, my doctor explained that untreated sleep apnea could lead to heart problems, strokes, and a whole list of complications I'd rather not think about. So when Hurricane Marina decided to park itself over our county for 3 days straight, my first concern wasn't the downed trees or flooded streets. It was keeping my CPAP machine running. I'd learned my lesson during the last major storm 2 years ago. Back then, I'd figured the power would come back quickly and tried to tough it out for a few nights. Big mistake. By the 3rd day, I was so exhausted I could barely function, and my wife had to take me to urgent care because my blood pressure was through the roof. This time, I was prepared. I'd bought a decent generator specifically for emergencies like this. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep my medical equipment running and maybe save the food in our freezer. The storm hit on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, half the neighborhood was without power, including us. I fired up the generator around 8 in the morning, positioning it as far from the house as the extension cords would allow, just like the manual recommended. For 2 days, everything was fine. My CPAP ran perfectly. We didn't lose hundreds of dollars worth of frozen food, and we even had enough juice to charge our phones and run a small fan. Our immediate neighbors were understanding. A few even asked if I could spare some power for their own medical devices. Then Karen showed up. I was checking the generator's fuel level Thursday evening when she marched across 3 front yards to get to me. I'd seen her around the neighborhood, but never really talked to her. She lived in one of the newer houses, the kind with the perfect lawn and the fancy cars in the driveway. Karen, you need to turn that thing off right now. I looked up from the fuel gauge, confused. Me, excuse me. Karen, that generator. It's been running for 2 days straight, and the noise is completely disrupting my children's peaceful screen detox experience. I blinked a few times, trying to process what she'd just said. Me, your children's what? Karen, we're using this power outage as an opportunity for my kids to disconnect from technology and reconnect with nature. Your generator is ruining the entire experience with all that mechanical noise. Me, ma'am, I need this generator to run my medical equipment. I have sleep apnea. Karen, I'm sure you can find another solution. Maybe stay at a hotel or something. My children's well-being is at stake here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The generator wasn't even that loud. It was one of the quieter models specifically designed for residential use. Me, I'm not turning off my medical equipment so your kids can have a quiet screen detox. The generator stays on. Karen, this is a residential neighborhood, not some industrial zone. There have to be noise ordinances. Me, lady, half the neighborhood is running generators right now. She looked around and seemed to realize I was right. You could hear the low hum of generators from at least 4 other houses on our street alone. Karen, well, theirs aren't as loud as yours. That was obviously not true, but I wasn't going to argue with someone who thought her kid's screen time was more important than my ability to breathe at night. Me, sorry, but it's staying on. I walked back toward my house, but she followed me. Karen, if you don't turn that off, I'm calling the police. Me, go ahead. I figured that would be the end of it. Most reasonable people wouldn't actually call the cops over something so ridiculous. But 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my house. The officer was polite, but looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He explained that he'd received a noise complaint and needed to check things out. Officer, sir, can you show me what you're running off that generator? I walked him around to the back of the house where I had the CPAP machine plugged in, along with the extension cord running to the kitchen for the refrigerator and freezer. Me, sleep apnea. Without this machine, I stopped breathing at night. The officer nodded and made some notes. Officer, and the other equipment? Me, just trying to save our food. We've got about $300 worth of groceries in that freezer. He measured the distance from the generator to the nearest neighbor's house and checked the decibel level with some kind of meter. Officer, everything looks fine here, sir. You're well within the legal limits for generator use, especially for medical equipment. Then he walked over to Karen, who had been standing in her yard watching the whole interaction. Officer, ma'am, this gentleman is using his generator for legitimate medical needs. There's no noise violation here. Karen, but what about my children's detox experience? The officer stared at her for a long moment. Officer, ma'am, that's not a legal issue. I suggest you find another way to manage your family's activities. After the officer left, Karen stomped back to her house. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. The next morning, I heard her own generator start up. Apparently, her dedication to her children's screen detox only lasted as long as her own convenience. But around noon, her generator suddenly quit running. Over the next few hours, I watched from my window as she went door to door, asking neighbors if they had spare parts or knew anything about generator repair. Everyone seemed to have the same response, a polite, "Sorry, can't help you," before closing their doors. Her husband came home that evening to a dark house and warm beer. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the body language suggested he wasn't thrilled about the situation. The power came back on the following Tuesday. By then, Karen's generator had been sitting silent in her backyard for 4 days. Funny how quickly the peaceful screen detox philosophy disappeared when her own comfort was at stake. Story 5. I've been traveling for work for about 3 years now, and I thought I'd seen it all. But what happened at the Comfort Inn last Tuesday still makes my head spin. Let me give you some background first. I'm a sales rep for a medical equipment company, which means I'm on the road about 2 weeks out of every month. I've gotten pretty good at the whole travel routine: book hotels in advance, always print confirmation emails, keep everything organized. After a few nightmare trips early in my career, where I showed up to fully booked hotels with no record of my reservation, I learned to be extra careful about these things. This particular trip was to a mid-sized city about 4 hours from my home base. I'd booked a room at the Comfort Inn 3 weeks ahead of time, specifically requesting room 212 because it's on the second floor away from the elevator noise, and I'm a light sleeper. The confirmation email was sitting right there on my phone with my name, dates, and room number clearly listed. I pulled up to the hotel around 6 p.m. after a long day of client meetings. The place was nothing fancy, your typical mid-range chain hotel with a small lobby, continental breakfast setup, and that generic hotel carpet that's somehow the same pattern everywhere. I walked up to the front desk where a young guy, maybe early 20s, was working the evening shift. Desk clerk, good evening, checking in. Me, yes, I have a reservation under my last name. Should be room 212. The clerk started typing on his computer, nodding as he pulled up my information. Desk clerk, perfect, I've got you right here. Room 212 for 2 nights. Can I see your ID and credit card? I was reaching into my wallet when this woman came barreling through the front door. She was probably in her 50s, wearing a wrinkled business suit and dragging a large suitcase behind her that kept catching on the carpet. Her hair was messy like she'd been running her hands through it, and she had this wild look in her eyes. Without even acknowledging that I was in the middle of checking in, she marched right up to the counter and slammed her purse down. "Karen, excuse me. I need room 212 immediately." The desk clerk looked confused and glanced between her and me. "Desk clerk, I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm currently checking this gentleman into room 212. Do you have a reservation?" "Karen, a reservation? I don't need a reservation. I always stay in room 212 when I'm in town. Always. It's my room." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I held up my phone with the confirmation email. "I'm sorry, but I booked this room 3 weeks ago. I have the confirmation right here." Karen spun around and looked at me like I just told her the sky was green. "Karen, you booked my room? Who do you think you are? I've been staying in 212 for years. Years. This is completely unacceptable." She turned back to the poor desk clerk, who was looking more uncomfortable by the second. "Karen, fix this. Right now. Give him a different room and give me 212. "Desk clerk, ma'am, I understand you're upset, but this gentleman has a confirmed reservation for that specific room. Do you have a confirmation email or ID I could look up?" "Karen, I told you, I don't need a reservation. Call your manager. Call corporate. I don't care who you have to call, but I'm getting that room." The clerk looked at me apologetically, and I just shrugged. This wasn't his fault, and I wasn't about to let some entitled woman bully him into giving away my room. "Desk clerk, let me see if I can find any record of a reservation under your name. What's your last name?" Karen gave him her name, and he spent about 2 minutes clicking through screens. "Desk clerk, I'm not showing any reservation under that name for tonight or tomorrow night." "Karen, then your system is broken. Look, I drive 3 hours to get here every month for business. I always book the same room. Someone obviously screwed up my reservation." "Ma'am, even if there was some mix-up with your booking, I made my reservation weeks ago. The room is mine." She whipped around to face me again, and I could see her getting more agitated. "Karen, you stole my room. You probably saw that I booked 212 and deliberately took it to mess with me. That's theft." At this point, I was starting to get annoyed. I'd had a long day, I was tired, and I just wanted to get to my room and order some room service. "That's ridiculous. I don't even know who you are. I booked this room because it's away from elevator noise, not because of some conspiracy against you." "Karen, don't you dare call me ridiculous. I'm a business professional and I deserve respect." She turned back to the desk clerk, who was starting to look a little panicked. "Karen, if you don't fix this right now, I'm calling corporate and having you fired. This is customer service at its worst. You're going to lose your job over this." The poor kid was maybe 19 years old and probably making $10 an hour. He didn't deserve to be threatened over something that wasn't even his fault. "Look, why don't you just book a different room? I'm sure they have other rooms available." "Karen, other rooms? Other rooms? I don't want other rooms. I want my room. The room I always stay in." "Desk clerk, ma'am, I'd be happy to put you in room 210 or 214. They're very similar to 212. "Karen, no, you don't understand. I have a routine. I know exactly where everything is in 212. I know which side of the bed the outlets are on. I know how the shower works. You can't just put me somewhere else." At this point, a small line was forming behind us with other guests trying to check in. I could see them getting impatient, and I felt bad that this woman was holding everyone up. The desk clerk must have noticed too, because he picked up the phone. "Desk clerk, let me call my manager and see if we can figure something out." While he was on the phone, Karen started pacing back and forth in front of the counter, muttering under her breath about incompetent staff and stolen reservations. I just stood there holding my ID and credit card, wondering how long this was going to take. After about 5 minutes, the manager came out from the back office. She was a woman in her 40s who looked like she'd dealt with difficult customers before. "Manager, I understand there's some confusion about room 212. Karen, finally, someone with authority. This man stole my room and your desk clerk won't do anything about it. Manager, ma'am, I've looked at our system, and this gentleman has a confirmed reservation for room 212. I don't see any reservation under your name. Karen, your system is wrong. I stay here every month. Check your records from previous months. The manager spent a few minutes looking through their computer system. Karen, that's impossible. I always request 212. Always. Manager, ma'am, are you sure you booked with us? There's another Comfort Inn about 15 miles away on the other side of town. Karen paused for just a second, and I saw something flicker across her face. Karen, of course I booked with you. I'm not stupid. But the manager had already picked up the phone and was dialing. Manager, let me just call our sister location and see if they have a reservation under your name. Karen, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to prove I belong here. The manager spoke quietly into the phone for about a minute, then hung up. Manager, ma'am, the Comfort Inn on Maple Street has a reservation for you tonight in room 212. It looks like you may have booked with the wrong location. The lobby went dead silent. Even Karen stopped pacing. I saw her face turn bright red. Karen, that's not. They must have transferred my reservation without telling me. Manager, ma'am, that's not how our system works. Each hotel manages their own bookings independently. Karen, well then transfer it here. Call them and tell them to cancel my reservation and book me here instead. Manager, I can't do that. They're fully booked tonight, and we have no available rooms. This gentleman has the only reservation for room 212. I couldn't help myself. Me, so you do always stay in room 212. Just not at this hotel. Karen shot me a look that could have melted steel. Karen, this is all your fault somehow. If you hadn't stolen my room, none of this would have happened. Manager, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're disturbing other guests. Karen, I'm disturbing them. What about him? He's the thief. The manager's patience was clearly running out. Manager, sir, let's get you checked in. Ma'am, I'd suggest you drive over to the other Comfort Inn. They're expecting you. She processed my check in while Karen stood there fuming. As the manager handed me my key card, Karen made one last attempt. Karen, this is outrageous. I'm calling corporate and telling them how badly I've been treated. You should be making this right. You should be compensating me for this mix-up. Manager, ma'am, this wasn't our mix-up. You booked with a different hotel. Now I need to ask you to leave so I can help the other guests who are waiting. Karen looked around the lobby like she was expecting the other guests to take her side, but everyone was just staring at her with a mixture of amusement and annoyance. Karen, fine, but I'm never staying at any Comfort Inn ever again. You've lost a loyal customer. She grabbed her suitcase and stormed toward the door, but turned around one more time. Karen, and you should be ashamed of yourself for not doing the right thing. Me. The right thing was booking my room 3 weeks in advance and showing up with proper identification. She made a disgusted noise and stomped out the door. Through the glass, I could see her struggling to get her suitcase into her car while still muttering angrily. The manager looked exhausted. Manager, I am so sorry about that. Some people just can't admit when they've made a mistake. Me, no worries. Not your fault she can't tell 2 hotels apart. As I headed to the elevator, I heard one of the other guests in line say to his wife, "Can you believe some people think the world revolves around them?" I got to room 212, and you know what? It was just a regular hotel room. Nice enough, but nothing special. Certainly nothing worth screaming at innocent hotel workers over. The outlets were on the right side of the bed. The shower worked fine, and I got a good night's sleep. The next morning at breakfast, The desk clerk from the night before was there setting up the coffee station. Desk clerk, how was your room, sir? Me, perfect. Thanks for handling that situation so professionally last night. Desk clerk, thanks. That was definitely a first for me. My manager said the other hotel called this morning apparently. She showed up there around 9 p.m. still complaining about us and demanding they comp her room because of the trauma she experienced here. Me, please tell me they didn't actually comp her room. Desk clerk, nope. They told her she was lucky they held the room since she was 3 hours late for check-in. I couldn't help but laugh. Some people really do think the world owes them everything, even when their problems are entirely their own making. Karen learned that night that "I always stay here" doesn't work when you're at the wrong hotel entirely.